I think it means not to fill up your
Okay.
disc with it, maybe.
Presentation. That's Greek presentation.
It's the owl thing. It's
Oh.
the ghost is our speaking.
Why am I?
So this camera,
Yeah,
there's a
it'll
camera in
show you
here.
when
When
they're
somebody
speaking.
speaks, it points the camera in that direction. So you and I are closest, so it'll listen to us.
Doesn't work.
Okay. Yes. Now, if I get up and start talking, okay, it'll follow me, I think. I think it'll follow me if I, yes.
Oh, yeah, that's probably.
So it'll follow me. Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for coming. This is a lot more people than I thought was coming. It's nice to meet all of you and to see some of you again. So Ruth Padu and I, we've advised two great teams from the Worcester Community Project Center, which is run by Laura Roberts. They both had very different and very interesting projects, and I've very much enjoyed working with the teams. I'm looking forward to your final presentations. Now, I've also very much enjoyed co-advising with Ruth and learning from Laura running the project center. Most people in this room have already listened to me talk enough this term, so I'm going to sit down and we'll have the lake team go first. Okie dokie. Unless you would like to say something else. Questions appear here. What is this? Yeah. I think you shared the wrong screen. That, nope, yeah, nope, no.
That one.
Okay, that looks good.
Hello, everyone. We are the Indian Lake Watershed Association, Modernizing Archival Management. I'm Martin Crew. I'm an industrial engineer.
I'm Hassan Ismaili. I'm a robotics engineer.
I'm David Gibson. I'm a robotics and mechanical engineer.
I'm Tyler Riggs, and I'm a mechanical engineer. Our advisors are Aaron Sakulich and Ruth McCall.
So starting off with the introduction. So the first thing was, what is Indian Lake? Indian Lake is an 104-acre lake in Worcester, Massachusetts. It's just adjacent to I-190. Many people enjoy boating, fishing, and kind of laying in the sun near the lake. But what kind of protects these like securities that the lake offers? The ILWA is the community organization in the area that kind of allows for all this to happen. They do this by keeping the lake clean, adjusting the fish populations, and protecting from the highway system.
Problem statement. So this is how can we determine the events, documentation, and artifacts that are worth preserving, and how are we going to preserve them for the future?
To preserve the heritage and history of the Indian Lake Watershed Association, we created an archive of their documents that could be made accessible to the residents of the Indian Lake neighborhood. When we first started the project, the association had many physical documents that made up its institutional records. These physical records were decentralized, vaguely organized, and not easily accessible. These documents needed to be organized into specific, well-documented categories and subcategories, as well as digitized into a digital repository. We mainly focused our research on establishing the organizational structure that the association could use to preserve its documents and institutional records. The main challenge we faced was creating a sorting system that could be used to identify each document while also making it easy enough to use so that anyone could organize documents in the future.
Before moving on, the question may come up: why preservation of heritage and institutional memory? And well, the main reason is value, but then how do we measure this value? And the first thing is cultural value, and the meaning of cultural value is constructed and agreed upon by members of the community. So in the case of the Indian Lake community, it's the meaning of culture and the cultural heritage is held by the community itself. Second reason is it serves as a tool for urban development and planning. So an example of this is that in 1970, the neighborhood pushed against a proposal of building Route 52, nowadays I-190, and that would have taken a portion of the lake. And so such action from the neighborhood but also the preservation of its history has led to a more sustainable urban development. The third is higher needs. And so looking at it from the lens of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, preservation of heritage contributes to the satisfaction of higher human needs beyond basic needs due to its contribution to truth, meaning, and wholeness. And lastly, is the preserving institutional memory of the ILWA can lead to more efficient business. And it can inform the association's operations. It can lead to more accountability, transparency, good governance, and for future references. And moving on to the methodology. So what did we do? Our overarching goal was to create an archive for the Indian Lake Watershed Association. So how did we do this? We came up with three main objectives. First, we gathered information on the best archiving practices. Secondly, we decided on the historical relevance of the documents. And third, we created an archiving manual to document our archiving processes and our naming conventions.
To complete our first objective, we asked ourselves, how do we organize decades of documents and that belong to an institution or organization? For this, we conducted semi-structured interviews with Amy Smith at WPI Gordon Library's Archives and Special Collections so that we can learn more about archiving practices and methods from a professional. She was able to guide us in the right direction to learn about the organizational structure for our archive. We inquired about different categorizational methods that she used in her work with various archives and how we could apply them to our project. She also pointed us to a book that you can see here that's called Archiving and Arranging and Describing Archives and Manuscripts by Kathleen Rowe. This provided a lot of useful information and archiving techniques, as well as examples of archival repositories and organizational methods. This was the primary resource that we consulted throughout our project.
So our next objective asks us the question, how do we know what documents are important and should be included in the archive? So the first thing we did to kind of start off with this objective was we explored the contents of the boxes. So we went through all 5 boxes and created 5 categories. These categories included projects, community correspondence, history, meeting minutes and agendas, and financials. We then took these 5 boxes and then did a semi-structured interview with Aaron Sakulich, our advisor and sponsor at the OWA. And after this meeting, we kind of came out with 3 documents that were kind of unimportant to the archive. These were any scrap paper, anything that was illegible, and anything that was already archived by another organization. After that, we kind of further dove into the boxes and organized everything into more categories, series and sub-series.
So for the third objective, we asked ourselves, how do we present the archiving process that we created and utilized for future additions to the archive? So for this, we ended up falling on an archive manual being the best presentation for the archive process itself. Through interviews with Ms. Smith, we were able to consult her expertise and get a better idea of what the archive manual itself should look like. Also, through our own experiences with the project, we got a better handle on what the manual should be looking to do. The manual will also be setting standards for the archive to keep it organized down in the future.
Moving on to the results. One of the main findings that we had from our interviews with Ms. Smith and on our research from literature was the need for donor agreements. And donor agreements are needed for when there's a transfer of ownership, for example, personal records or manuscripts to the organization, to the Indian Lake Watershed Association. The donors agreements also provide the conditions, so the donors can provide the conditions for administering that group of records, and also it asserts the legal transfer of the record. So down the line, if the donor is like, oh, why do you have my manuscripts? Then this document points to that transfer of ownership.
So next, we organized all the physical documents of the ILWA. So we ended up organizing them into 8 total categories. Some of the main categories that we did were correspondence and communication, which is any kind of newsletter or anything that is sent out to the community. The next one was projects. So these are some examples of projects that we kind of had. Some of them include water monitoring, Little Indian, and others like that, and WPI projects as well. These projects contain sub-series, such as external resources, studies, reports, and finances, which has all the documents inside of those. And the last one that we kind of did, or the last main important one, was the community history category, which we kind of determined was important as it would be the one that's publicly shared in the archive. In total, we were able to scan and document and name 571 documents. We found that this was quite impressive for our standards. And then we also, sorry, wording mistake, but we then took this and organized it into a spreadsheet so that the ILWA and whoever takes on this project after is able to kind of look at this and know what documents are already scanned, what have been scanned but not renamed, and are in the archive, and such and so on.
Another key finding from our interview with Ms. Smith was the subject of active and inactive archives. And for our archive, the term for our project, the term inactive is used for any file that is either 2 years old or is no longer in use. It's no longer in use. However, like some files of multi-year projects and a project that is still active, those would be considered active. So in our archive, we mostly in the boxes of records that were given to us by Beth, Marco, thank you for that. We mostly focus on inactive records, which we'll talk about.
So features of Preservica. Preservica is the program we ended up falling on to utilize for the inactive documents. This program is more than your average data storage and document searching program. It also includes a lot of protective features, such as translating files to current formats as technologies change over time to ensure you don't lose files over time. It'll also be scanning for corruption and will store the documents if needed. The program itself is also very versatile, allowing the archive owner to create public and private files and make sure they have it's also going to be a very affordable option, being free up to 5 gigabytes and also providing a lot of affordable upgrade options thereon after.
When it came to ensuring the archive's easy implementation and future updates from the association, we decided it would be best to create an archiving manual. The rationale behind creating this manual was that it will allow us to share our experiences on this project to the association directly. We felt this was important as it took a lot of time to figure out the more streamlined processes to arrange the files. On the first page here, we have the necessary steps to properly organize a file in the archive, from first scanning the document to naming it according to the specific naming convention at the end. We made sure to clearly describe each step so that even a new user to Google Drive or Preservica could follow along easily. On the second page, we have an image of the full archive structure. It shows the different levels of organization that could be used to file away your documents. The square bolts represent the categories, the circle bolts represent the series, and the diamond bolts represent the subseries. Within the subseries is where your document would be placed. Each of these categories, series, and subseries have a folder named after them in the archive. In the full manual, there's a continuation of this structure you can see, as well as the rest of the naming conventions. Moving on to the recommendations and conclusions, we recommend that the association use the archive manual that we created to file away any new documents that they get. Once the association has in possession a box of records related to a project, for example, they should arrange them according to the archive structure we established. Any intellectual relationships between the documents should be identified when arranging them. For example, let's say the association gets a box full of random documents. In one case, they may find many records related to a project, such as lake cleanup. In this scenario, all of the documents related to the cleanup should be organized together.
Our second recommendation is the use of donor agreements. And so the ILO will need to carefully consider the process of receiving donations of personal manuscripts and records, for example, more personal scrapbooks. And we created a template donor agreement, which you saw earlier, that they can use going into.
Thirdly, we recommend the digital and physical archives be kept to the same standard. It's essential the physical document itself is brought up to the archive structure first and then digitally. This will prevent future disorganization and confusion.
However, this doesn't really mean that everything should be printed. This is mainly for any files that the ILWA receives physically first and then needs to be scanned and moved into the archive. Anything that is electronically generated before it would be needed to be printed, such as an email or a PDF, should just be printed to PDF and then transferred into the archive. Lastly, we'd like to recommend that after all the historical documents and everything are put into the archive, into the Preservica, that a link is added to the ILWA website so the community can start interacting and seeing all these cool documents that the ILWA has in their possession. Lastly, we'd like to thank everyone for coming. We'd also like to thank our advisors, Ruth McHugh, Aaron Sekulich, and Zoe Eddy. We'd also like to thank those we interviewed in order to complete this project, Amy Smith and Beth Bracco. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
And did you find a place to store the physical document? Under
So,
kind of environmental
so as of now, that place is Aaron's home.
So Diane was not able to hear the question. The question was, is there a place to store the actual physical boxes other than an attic or a basement or something with some good environmental control? And the answer was, it will be my office until we do that. So in the future, when somebody asks a question, repeat it for the people at home. I hope somebody else has a question because the students were bragging about how nobody was going to ask any questions right before everybody showed up. So somebody's really got to.
So I'm curious about the, what is it called, Preservica? And if there are other similar archive program, cloud art, I assume it's cloud, so cloud archive programs that you considered and what made you choose that one?
Yeah, so we mainly look.
Repeat the question for those playing at home.
at.
The question was, why did they choose Preservica over some alternative software?
So we mainly at first looked into storing all of it on a Google Drive, as well as archive.org and then Preservica. We ended up kind of looking through everything. Preservica, although it does have a cost associated after the 5 gigabytes, it allows for that like scan for corruption and then transfer into further file formats. So what this basically means is when you upload it to Preservica, it not only just like kind of takes in a PDF and holds it, it transfers it to kind of their own sort of data storage type. And then later on down the line, if all of a sudden, you know, like when text or .txt went to .word or whatever it is, it kind of will be able to transfer those documents up. So you'll never kind of like have like PDF and then all of a sudden in 10 years, like, I don't know what it's gonna be called, but like some new uneditable format comes out, that there's gonna be some kind of change.
It'll just be a chip in your brain.
Yeah, or something. It'll update to that format. And then if it, after it updates that, it scans it as well to kind of check to see, oh, is this the same as what it previously was? And if it's not, then it'll restore the other one and either try again or just leave it as a PDF.
Do you happen to have the Preservica site handy and you could show us what perhaps a scrapbook of some sort looks like after it was scanned? That was the coolest thing you scanned, is the reason.
We scanned some other pretty cool documents.
It'll take me a second, but I can't.
570 other cool.
Not stop share. That's all right.
We seem to be having some technical problems.
We'll get there eventually.
So I do have a comment and or questions. Do you want me to
Sure.
wait or
You can
have
ask-
or ask to
You
the
can ask everybody but David.
Oh.
So the other 3 that are just
To
standing there.
everyone except me. First, I just want to say thank you so much. Seeing this and seeing the work that you put into it, as the keeper of the 571 documents. I'm just so impressed, and I really appreciate the time you took to work on this. I can tell you it was more like 671 until about a year ago, so I did purge it down a little bit. I don't know if all of that really needs to have hard copies.
Right.
So, hopefully you guys can talk about and that in the future. And we can talk afterwards, but I just wanted to really commend you for the time you took. It was really something that was vitally needed, as you can tell. And a lot of the things are just things that, as an individual, I might have tossed some time ago, but as a nonprofit organization, you really need to give some thought to really what you should hold on to and what you can let go. And by you organizing it and taking the time to do this, I think that it will make it much easier in the future to make some of those decisions. And again, put something into the archive. For the future, it doesn't have to be right in front of you. The files are going through every day. So thank you very much for your time and efforts on this.
It's worth mentioning, without the organization we did, we'd still be doing that. Thank you for that.
To be fair, the 571, they still have
Yeah, it's
some
still-
left over.
So
That wasn't all
The
of them.
571 is only about, we'd say, probably 33 to 45, 50% maybe.
What?
Do you think it's more?
How much?
60%? No.
But all of it is physically
100%
organized,
is-
not everything's digitally. So our goal was to partially populate, so to give an example and to advance the work for available, but the main focus was like, how can we create this structure that it can be added?
So basically, you'll be working on it through the summer. What?
Next school year, I will scan one document a day while I'm waiting for the coffee pot to heat up.
So this is an example of the the Preservica.
Oh, wow.
So this is one of the scrapbooks that we were able to do before the library scanner. Yeah, this one is.
Before you broke the library
They're
scanner.
not very good.
That was the passive voice.
No, we clarified this, no, we did not break it. We came back one day and it was not working.
Yeah, and then
That did throw a wrench into our operations, but we moved past it.
here's. So these are all,
Receipts for the cross home.
yeah,
How did you do with the
Yeah.
metadata? Did you have?
We did
you
not have
created
time
that?
to create the metadata. Because it was,
We've been working through the week to finish up scanning and organizing, so it's been a long ride. We've gone through many different renditions of our archive structures, and we've had to work through a lot of the issues because we've realized that some documents belong to multiple places, so we changed up our sub-series multiple times, and through that, we found what we thought was the best organizational structure that we could make, and then at the end, it was kind of crunch time. We had to get everything scanned at the end because that was really the moment where we're happy with the organizational structure we finally had.
So did you do anything with the digital documents that we already had? Are you just mainly focused on the hard copies?
we mainly focused on taking the hard copies and putting them digitally.
Okay.
Because we figured if, like, the one thing that would be like, take more time to do would be the scanning and then moving.
Mhm.
Rather than if you already have it kind of in a Google Doc drive, it's easier to kind of just like, oh, I can save that to my computer and then move it if I need to. Kind of thing, or just move it all to, it's easier to move files than it is to walk across the building or go to, Staples or something to try and scan all these documents.
and like Martin said, it was really an iterative approach because it wasn't like we designed the structure and then we organized and scanned. It was more like that was happening throughout the 7 weeks, and we had to go back and redesign the structure because we found more documents. So yeah, it wasn't as cascaded as it may seem.
So what I would like to propose is why doesn't somebody from the other team go up and get your presentation ready while we ask one last question from the. La-di-da. Okay, well then,
I shared it with David beforehand so that we could.
okay. Well, then you all get ready to get on up there. From somebody who's playing at home, the question is, how do you anticipate using what you've learned here in the future, either personally or professionally?
I guess I'll start with this one. We can each answer it, I guess. Probably the best thing.
I'm hiring next year.
Personally, I'm gonna use this to kind of hopefully be able to organize all my own documents, because in the past, have kind of had awful organization myself. So hopefully I'll kind of be able to use this as an experience of like, oh, if I just shove a bunch of papers into a folder, it's gonna take me a long time to organize later. So rather just keep it organized from the beginning.
Yeah, for me, I really found, the one thing I think I took in from this is that it's better to do things right the first time and then to move like one step at a time. Because I found, like looking back at it, it would have been a lot easier to create the whole structure first and then be happy with that and then start moving documents and scanning them. But since it's our first time doing this, we had no idea that's the best approach. So I think I'll take that away from it, of taking one step at a time and fully completing it before moving on to the next, so that I don't have to go back and go over my work that I've already done.
Oh,
For me, I shared with a member of my local religious community, and he shared that you're like, why aren't you doing this work for us? We have the exact same problem. We have a bunch of,
it's like buying a pickup truck. Everybody's gonna.
we have a bunch of boxes that need, to be digitized and organized, and they're in my home. It's like, it's something we can do this summer.
Well, good luck with that. Well, a round of applause for the team. The people playing along at home are also clapping in case you weren't able to see them.
Great job, guys. Thank you.
And now we have the second team of the night from Buen, Samaritano. I have to admit, I've been practicing saying Samaritano.
Samaritano.
When's
You had everything but the last word, right?
Samaritano, you gotta roll the R.
You gotta roll
Samaritano.
every R and J.
Well, I came out Italian for some reason.
Okay, the whole thing will be in Spanish from now on.
Gracias.
I get part of it, but certain words I don't know.
Vamos.
Hey, everybody, we are team for EBS, and our project was the transition Buen Samaritano to a digital data collection platform. I'm Caleb Talley.
I'm Chris Cook.
I'm Jenny Lar, and I'm Olivia Rockford.
Buen Samaritano, or EBS for short, is a nonprofit volunteer-based food pantry. They are located in Worcester and weekly distribute food, clothing, and furniture to their clients, which are people that are in need. The main problem that EBS is facing is the lack of automation in their data collection system. Currently, they use a paper spreadsheet, which is similar to the one shown there, to capture multiple clients' information during their food distribution. After this, they take the spreadsheet here and put all the data into an Excel sheet. And after that, they take all the spreadsheets from the week and from the month, and they transfer it to Worcester County Portal. And this is very time consuming because you have to import each cell of information individually 3 times.
So what is food insecurity? The United States Department of Agriculture defines food insecurity as a household level economic and social condition of limited or uncertain access to adequate food. The national food insecurity rate for 2020 was 10.5%. But among households of Black and Hispanic, it was almost double, about 20%. This is relevant as EBS has a large Hispanic client base. Food insecurity can lead to malnutrition and poorer physical and mental health. There have been several government intervention programs like supplemental nutrition assistance program or SNAP. There have also been charitable food sectors like food banks, soup kitchens, and of course food pantries like EBS. So we wanted to better understand our sponsor and the problem. So we researched the city of Worcester, and just for some basic information, Worcester is located in the heart of Massachusetts. It's the second largest city in New England, having a population of around 200,000, which 45% are identified as minorities. The city of Worcester has the largest food insecurity rate among its neighboring communities. As of 2019, about 25% of residents are on SNAP. So, what should we develop for EBS to improve their operations to help in decreasing food insecurity in the city of Worcester?
So before diving into the process of our project, I want to show you a visual of what's currently implemented at EBS and what our final product is. So we utilize survey platform to record the data and also provide data visualization. And we also created multiple versions of the survey in different languages so that it can help the EBS staff to better communicate with their client. And lastly, we also created a user menu for EBS on how to navigate the survey platform.
So we developed 5 objectives that we worked on over the last 7 weeks to try to achieve our deliverables. The first was to understand logistical operations at EBS. The second was to identify EBS user requirements for data collection. The third was to learn about data collection tools at other food pantries. The fourth was to determine the best digital platform for data collection. And finally, to develop a plugin to interface the data tuition portal. So we participated, our first objective was to participate in different activities at EBS to better understand their operations. The first activity we participated in was food distribution. We learned that food distribution happens every Friday from 11 to 1 p.m. in which 1 box of food is given out to a household that should last for about a week. Some key findings we found were that one volunteer collects information from clients on the pen and paper system that you saw previously. And this information is given to Worcester County Food Bank. Worcester County Food Bank uses this information to determine how much food to allocate to the food pantry. Another thing that we learned was that there were many different volunteers that help out during food distribution. The second activity we participated in was food pickup. This activity occurs every Wednesday in which 2 to 3 volunteers help to pick up and transport food from Worcester County. In this activity, we learned 2 key findings. One in that we learned how Worcester County Food Bank and EBS collaborate to track food. We wanted to see if that process can be applicable for the demographic data collection. And then the second thing that we found was that we identified and helped improve some operations related to food pickup. Mainly, we organized EBS's food inventory to better identify and find certain foods in their supply. So these key findings help guide us in finding an applicable data collection method.
And to identify the user requirements for our data collection, we participated in food distribution, food pickup, and also interviewed EBS staff and volunteers. So from there, we learned that we have to include 6 items in our system. So the first item is that EBS has to report a set of data back to Worcester County Food Bank every month. So our system would have to record those data. And second is that EBS serve about 1,000 households per month. So our system should also be able to handle a large amount of data. And when we interviewed some of the volunteers, they mentioned that they would like the system to be quick and easy to operate, and most importantly, accessible even without internet, because some part of the unit does not have internet. And it should also provide data analysis and visualization so that EBS can utilize those data to create reports and apply to grants. And lastly, we translated the survey into multiple languages, so to help the communication between the EBS staff and their clients. And to learn about the data collection tools at other food pantries, we conducted interviews with multiple food pantries in the local area. We thought that it's a good thing to do because we can learn about what others are using, and that will give us a reference on how to start and how to design our project. So after interviewing multiple local food pantries in Worcester, we learned that some of them use a survey platform, for example, SurveyMonkey, and some of them purchased an all-in-one software solution, such as PantrySoft.
Our next objective was to determine the best digital platform for EBS. First, we gathered 10 different data collection platforms. We got these platforms from people we interviewed and from independent research. We also came up with certain features that we felt were necessary for EBS, which included sufficient amount of surveys, offline access, cross-platform compatibility, and the ability to export data to Excel. Comparing these 10 different survey platforms using our features that we need, we came up with our final 3 options. So a survey, job form, and quick tap survey. After this, we made one sample survey for each of these data platforms and asked the director of operations which of these platforms she liked the best. And in the end, we chose Jotform because of its user-friendly experience, its great mobile app, and its great price point.
Our fifth and final objective was to develop a way to get the data from the system into the Worcester County Food Bank as painlessly as possible. As through many of our interviews with different food pantries, the general consensus was the Worcester County Food Bank was very difficult to use and not user-friendly at all. So to accomplish this, we interviewed one of the CS professors on campus and came with multiple solutions to get around this problem. However, through this interview, we realized the easiest solution would be for Worcester County Food Bank themselves to update their system to allow the food pantries to upload data in a more streamlined fashion. So because of this was out of the scope of our project and something that we weren't able to accomplish.
And since we weren't able to provide a solution for transitioning the data from EBS to straight to Worcester County Food Bank, we made a recommendation for Worcester County Food Bank to consider providing alternative ways for the food pantry to input their data into the portal. And our second recommendation is for EBS, which is to provide tracking guidelines for the volunteers. When we participated in food distribution, we realized that there are not a lot of guidelines in place, and some of the volunteers will have to ask for clarification. So we thought that if they create a list of what items should be put into each box, that will help to reduce communication between our sponsor and the volunteer. And our final recommendation is to record food outputs for applying to grants. So recording food outputs is very important because it shows how much that the food pantry is giving out to the community. So we thought that if EBS will be able to record this data, that will help them to apply to more grants and get more resources. So we suggest that they can start weighing one of their boxes and multiply the number by the number of boxes that they gave out so that they can get a close approximation of how much food that they give them.
So then now in the top image, you can see the raw data from the jot form when it's exported to an Excel file. And then the bottom image is after it goes through our spreadsheet automation system, how it looks, and it's very similar to how it looks in the Worcester County Food Bank portal. So it's a lot easier to take this data and then move it over to the Worcester County Food Bank portal. And then here we have our form, which actually, luckily enough, last Friday, we were able to test out and able to put over 500 different surveys in from the entire month of April. And then we also have we translated the survey into 6 different languages, as those were generally the languages that EBS needed the most because they represented the majority of their clientele. So English, obviously, Spanish, Chinese, Portuguese, Vietnamese, and Albanian were the languages that we translated the survey into. And so lastly, we'd just like to say thank you for everyone here listening. We'd also like to thank Professor Kashuri and the Brazilian Student Association for the help with the translations. We'd like to thank our advisors, Aaron and Ruth, our ID 2050 advisor, Professor Zoe, Professor Eltabak, who was the CS professor who provided us information, the librarian, Karen Cooligan. We'd like to thank everyone we were able to interview, the food pantry, Worcester County Food Bank, EBS and the staff. And then obviously we'd like to thank Mari and all the volunteers at EBS for giving us the opportunity to work with them. So thank you for your time.
RT is applauding you at home, if you can't see the video. Whom has some questions? Somebody must have some questions. There we go.
Is the survey that you're sending out, is that put on like the people who are coming to the food bank to receive food clones, or is that on?
No, so
the food bank
yeah, so the question is whether the people coming to the have the survey put on their phones. So that's actually, there's one worker who has a tablet that we now has a tablet that has the survey on it. And every time someone comes up to them, they ask them questions on the survey to fill out the information. And then they submit the survey and then it reloads and they have a new one for the next person who comes up.
So I do want to say something. Thank you. I just want to let you know that these, was it the 14 weeks? How long we were been together? That long, right? Like that week. They have been amazing in the sense of, learning about the community, meeting so many different people. And, this is a grassroots nonprofit organization has been serving the community this year, 31 years. And this is, has been something that I've always wanted, is to get out of paper and pen. And you guys did the research. And of course, the Worcester County Food Bank, I know that was a struggle that we wasn't able to come up with that, but at least you're making my life a little bit easier. But I did want to say that you guys, we are a team of 5 at EBS, and everyone else that comes to Buen Samaritano are volunteers from either colleges, Worcester public schools, churches, other organizations. They all volunteer. And I want to give a shout out to Chris and his fraternity because they actually started helping my dad, which my parents were the ones that started the organization back in 1991, and my dad is 77, and they started going to the Worcester County Food Bank and helping with going to the Worcester County Food Bank and picking up boxes. So shout out to some of you that are there as well. So I want to say thank you for that. And then Caleb and Olivia and Jenny, I mean, you guys have been with me there when I was short staffed making boxes, so I appreciate all the hard work that you guys have done. And, EBS will always be your home. And thank you for all the work that you're doing. And this is only the beginning of a new relationship, no friendship.
So we have 2 questions coming in from the adoring multitude that have joined us on Zoom. What was the most unexpected part or curveball of this project? And what was their translation process for 6 idiomas? That is a lot of idiomas.
I can answer the language question, I guess. So for the Spanish translation, that was actually myself, and my girlfriend actually helped me verify the translations. For the Portuguese, we used the Brazilian Student Association. We talked to professors for the Albanian, Janie translated it into Chinese, and I don't remember who did the Vietnamese.
Oh, I work with my friend to translate the survey to Vietnamese. And I think, one of the biggest curveball is that we couldn't achieve objective 5, which is about the Worcester County Food Bank portal. 'Cause, I think at first we thought that we might be able to do it because it's just website and maybe we can try to figure out something out. And then we talked to Worcester County Food Bank and they're pretty set on the fact that they're not gonna do it right now. And they said that they have been in the process for a few years. And yeah, so we figured that we couldn't really try to convince them or maybe try to come up with something that they can use. So yeah, so we couldn't do that.
Did you tell them about ITPs?
Yeah, we put
It would be
them.
it should be a computer science
Right,
MQB.
Like, trust me, this has been, since 1991, we have been with the Worcester County Food Bank. And this has been just, now that, I mean, we're in 2022, it's just, because there is a lot of grassroots, very older, nonprofits, I mean, they're partners, and a lot of them are not used to change, so, but I'm ready for change, and let's do this. So we'll convince them one day,
We're getting some support for the idea of a computer science MCT with the food bank.
Well, is there an option to edit this survey where if you wanted to spread this out to more of the Worcester, like located food banks, where like the first one would be like, what food bank are you for? And you kind of make like all like their own little section kind of
Yeah,
thing.
so this system that we developed is probably most applicable for partner agencies of Worcester Catholic Food Bank, as it's formatted and collecting data for Worcester Catholic Food Bank. So, yeah, any food pantries that are partnered with them.
So there's 125 partner agencies with the Worcester County Food Bank. And just that data collection is what they specifically need, right? No ID required, but that's just, but this, what they created for me, so job form, right? So job form, it worked out for me because there's other programs that we do have, like for Christmas, for Thanksgiving, that is certain data collections that I need, more demographics or ages or things like that. And so this, even though it's a small cost, but we did the math and, with donations, we're able to afford it, right? I'm able to do a lot of things as the demographics, doing a lot of pie charts. When it comes to like grants, since we're a nonprofit, this, the form that we ended up picking, it actually would help EBS. So, even with our volunteer staff, last Friday, they used their cell phones and it was just so easy to just get the information and that was it. And it was amazing. Just at the end of the food distribution, we were able to pull up the laptop and then boom, it was an Excel spreadsheet. But I do have to go actually tomorrow and go in and look at every single thing and go and put it into the portal. So it is a little, time consuming, but at least I'm not counting every single paper. So thank you for that time back in my life.
Very important.
Also, if another food pantry wants to use the same type of survey, you can make a template and then you can share with them.
That reminds me, was anybody else very surprised to learn there's apparently a software company out there that specifically caters to food pantry software
Yeah, that
development?
was an interesting thing that we learned in one of our interviews with one of the food pantries. They told us that they were using something called Pantry Soft that created theirs, but so it was interesting to find out that there was a software thing that was specifically designed for food pantries, but the one that was at least created, like, that we had seen was not was based on, and Pantry Soft is based on like the same people coming every time. So they have their own accounts, which is not how it works for EBS. So through that, we realized that that wouldn't be applicable to them because they don't have registered users. It's not the same people every time. They're people who are coming for the first time ever. So this wouldn't be something for them.
Well, unless there's any last minute questions, I think I'm gonna start, we have a round of recording to which I will, a round of applause, to which I will stop the recording. There we go.